Hey, what's up guys? Super Milesio here. Though I would forgive you for not recognizing me, given that I have substantially less hair than I did the last time we spoke. As if it wasn't obvious already, I've always been drawn to the art of video making. From the moment I could get my tiny little hands on a video camera, I've been filming everything from trips to the beach to feature-length films, for better or for worse. And I just hit a pretty exciting milestone. I got my first real camera. Now what I mean by real camera is that it's got an interchangeable lens, all the bells and whistles that you'd expect from a robust, legit video camera. In fact, I've already used this camera on this channel. If you watch my short film, The Grape Ape Escape, that was filmed entirely with this camera, and I'm so excited to see what I can do with it in the future. But folks, it has taken us quite a while to get to this point, and recently I was hit with not so much a wave as a tsunami of nostalgia. I've had quite a few video cameras over the years, ranging from crap to mega crap. We all start somewhere, right? And look at where we are now. Wouldn't it just be fun to take a trip in the time machine and explore every video camera that I've had up to this point, in chronological order? And you guys know that when I have an idea, 1 out of 10 times I will follow through. And well, welcome to the 10%. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go back to the beginning, talk about every camera that I've owned in the order that I owned them. We'll talk about the specs, the video quality, the time period that I used it, and what I used it for. And I'll also be giving them a rating from 1 to 10. Now, bear in mind, these ratings will be based on a number of factors, but ultimately it'll come down to my personal preference, so take the ratings with a grain of salt. Some of these cameras I actually managed to hold on to. I still have the exact same camera that I used. Some of them I lost or broke or something happened to them, and I had to track them down on eBay and purchase them again. But I do have all of them here physically today, which is very fun. We'll even get some test footage at the end and compare them back to back. Without further ado, here we go. Alright, we are starting off with the Flip video camera. Now this one is the Flip Ultra HD U260W model. It's quite a mouthful. This camera was released by Cisco in 2010. It retailed for $150, and obviously it's been long since discontinued, but you can find it used for anywhere from $20 to $30. Now this is a different camera than the one that I had, but it's the exact same model and color. I bought this on eBay for $23. Now, I used this camera from 2011 to 2012. I don't remember exactly how I got my hands on it. It was probably either a birthday or Christmas present, but I honestly don't remember. I loved this camera. I took this everywhere, to the point where people would tell me sometimes, like, you gotta put the camera away, like, enjoy the moment. I remember there was this one time we went to this hibachi grill place. It was one of those places they cook the food right in front of you on this big grill, which I still love going to those places. And I brought my Flip with me and I started to film while he was cooking, and even once he had put the food on my plate, I kept filming until he was finished. And the chef was like, "Oh no, you gotta eat your food."
You eat now, you're waiting, your food too cold, it's not good.
Because you can eat now.
But I was 7 years old and I was just so excited to be getting into this new world of filmmaking. Now, as far as quality goes, honestly, for the time, early 2010s, this was pretty good. I mean, for an entry-level video camera, you could do stuff with this. I mean, it wasn't gonna be great, but again, for the time, your options were pretty limited, and for $150, I mean, this thing was great. Of course, at 7 years old, I was by no means taking full advantage of its capabilities, but it is cool to know that this was kind of a pioneer in these sort of cheap but very effective video cameras for casual use. And I think part of the beauty of this camera is in its simplicity. First of all, I mean, listen to this. Oh, such a satisfying boot up sound. The user interface is incredibly simple with this camera. You've got a big red button in the center. You've got volume up and down or zoom. Then you've got a delete button and a play button that lets you go through your videos. Yeah, it doesn't get much simpler than that. That made it the perfect choice for a young, burgeoning 7-year-old filmmaker. And again, I carried this thing wherever I went. Now, it runs on 2 AA batteries. I think you can also get a battery pack for it. Back in the day, I used rechargeable AA batteries. And it would run a solid few hours on a single charge. It's not horrible. But none of that really matters. The best thing about this camera is the USB port. It's like a free fidget toy. I swear I would just do this all day. And mean, bring this back. Now, last thing I'll mention, it was on this camera that I started making my first movies. I don't really know if you can even call them movies. I mean, everything I filmed on this was a complete disaster. I mean, unless I set the camera down somewhere, it was going all over the place. I mean, what can you expect? I was 7 years old again. Now, that's about it for this camera. Now, I know I'm biased, but I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10 just because I love this thing to death. It feels so great. It's so simple, but so elegant. And again, this was really good for its time. Which brings us to this camera. Now, at a first glance, you're like, you just grab the same camera? No, this is a different camera. This is the Flip Slide HD S1240. Now, interestingly, this one also released in 2010, but I didn't get my hands on it until 2012. I think I still had my older model. I just saw this and really wanted to upgrade, so I got this either for Christmas 2011 or March in 2012, which is my birthday. I can't remember. Now, this thing retailed for $280. That's a solid $130 more than the Ultra HD, and even nowadays, it hasn't gone down in price nearly as much. You can expect to spend anywhere from $40 to $100 for one used, and I've even seen some boxed new ones go for well over $100. But side by side, you can see it's got a sleeker design. The lens is flush with the body, so it's just a rectangular prism. But of course, the main selling point for this camera, apart from better quality in general, is this. Yeah, Slide HD, because A, there's the slide bar right here, and also the screen is touchscreen, you can do all that. So this would allow you to film like this, of course, and then you can slide it out and watch your videos like this. And to answer the follow-up question, I know you're all asking, yes, they did still include a very satisfying USB port, thank God. Now the thing about this camera is that, well, there's no buttons. This is all a touchscreen. You can see that the interface looks pretty similar to the older Flip model, except everything is now on the touchscreen. It's mimicking actual buttons. And I gotta say, at the time, I mean, this was so cool. I didn't have an iPod or anything yet, so having a touchscreen device just blew my mind. Going back though, man, there's something about the tactile buttons that I just really miss. This touchscreen is just not as sensitive as I want it to be. I end up having to press really hard to get it to respond. And again, I kind of just prefer having the buttons really there. I don't know. Now, as far as the quality goes, again, I was definitely not taking full advantage of the quality. I was not using the right lighting or anything like that, so it's difficult comparing the old footage that I captured to see if there's any substantial difference. But I do believe that it does film at a slightly higher quality. But I think there is something far more important that I need to address with this camera. So as I mentioned, the Ultra HD that we just discussed has a number of different options for powering it. The most standard is just throw in a couple AA's. You can use rechargeable AA's. You can also buy a battery pack for it. You know, there's all sorts of choices. The only way to charge the Slide HD is through this USB port. You gotta plug it into your laptop. You can probably plug it into the wall as well. There is no option to power it using disposable batteries. And that wouldn't be so bad if the batteries used here weren't such pieces of crap. So you can do some research with this online. What I came to find is that the lithium batteries that they used in these cameras just don't have a very long or reliable shelf life, and most of them are not working properly, if at all, today. So I discovered that when I bought this one. I actually managed to find a huge deal on this. It was like $20, which from what I just said, that's much lower than you normally find these. And I should have clued in that it was probably too good to be true. It did say in the item description, untested, which I assume that's code for, yeah, this is broken, but, you know, I'll just call it untested so you can't get mad at me. So when you plug this in, the red light here lights up, but the screen doesn't do anything, and you could leave it plugged in for hours and nothing's gonna happen. So I thought, you know what, serves me right for taking a chance on a deal that was too good to be true. So I bought one that claimed to be new, unopened, still in the box, for a much higher price, and I encountered the exact same issue. So I did some research and I found out, yeah, these batteries are just not built to last, and most of the models you find, even if they're new, are just not gonna work anymore. And that sucks because obviously these are discontinued, you're not gonna find any support for them, and it's very hard to get to the battery inside. You can't just replace them very easily. But you guys know I'm not one to give up, and I really wanted one of these that actually worked. So rather than take my chances on buying a third one, I bought a new lithium battery that would be compatible with this, and I tore it apart. They really make it difficult to get to the battery, and I thought, surely there's no way this is still gonna work. I thought I had totally destroyed this thing, but I managed to get the battery in, closed it all back up, and hallelujah. This thing works, and I think I knocked a couple of things loose in there because it's wobbling around, and there's a big crack right here where I had to sort of break the plastic, but it works, and it's gonna work enough for me to get some test footage, so there you go. And now I own two of the exact same 14-year-old camera. Yay. But anyways, what's the conclusion on this camera? Guys, I gotta say, even though this one is flashier and has a touchscreen and all that, and it shoots at a slightly higher quality, I still prefer the older flip model. I like the tactile buttons, I like the form factor a little better, it just feels better in the hand, and the price difference is so substantial that I don't know if it warrants the upgrade. I like how I'm talking about this as if anyone is still using these cameras in any serious capacity. But yeah, no. But that brings us to the rating. Again, this is more or less the same camera, more or less the same quality. I really loved this thing as well when it came out. I thought it was so cool. Like I said, I do slightly prefer the Ultra HD, so I'm gonna give this one a 7 out of 10. And now we take a leap of faith from Flip to Sony. This is the Sony Bloggie Touch Camera MHS TS20. This retailed for $180 for the 4GB version and $200 for the 8GB version. And saying those storage sizes out loud just makes me chuckle nowadays, but I'm sure it was a lot more back then. But the time period I used it was 2013 to 2015. And the reason I got this one, I think, is because my Slide HD was actually stolen along with my original 3DS. And funny enough, try as I might, I cannot figure out if this is the 4 or 8GB version. They're seemingly identical. I can't find any indication on the camera or in the settings of which version this is, but it's one of the two. And as far as the form factor goes, you can see it's got about the same frontal view as the Flip. It's a lot thinner though, and this thing, it feels so tiny now. And as the name suggests, it does boast a touchscreen as well. The user interface is still pretty simple. You've got a big red button here for recording. Now the zoom feature is a part of the touchscreen itself. And you've got a couple modes here. You can go into video mode, you can view your videos. Most everything, like on the Slide HD, is going to be a part of the touchscreen itself. You've got some options here. Overall, pretty simple. So by the time I got this camera, I was trying to get a little more sophisticated with my movie making. That's not saying much, given this was the starting point.
Haha! I'm going to defeat you now! No, we're not. This is a big place, and I really am gonna defeat you. I have plenty of room to fight. No, you don't! Oh, yes, I do. Because we're in a wide open space, and we have lots of room to fight.
This is the camera that I used for my first Mario movie with my sister, where I was Mario, she was Luigi. It's a 2-hour movie. I've already reacted to that on my channel. You can find the original version as well. And this is the exact same camera. I did not have to rebuy this one. I held on to this. So this camera has some real nostalgia packed into it. There's also a couple unreleased movies that I shot with this. You can find some footage for that on my older channels. I won't get into that.
Well, that was easier than I thought.
But there is one glaring flaw that I'd like to address with this. It's so easy to cover up the microphone. When you're filming, you're either going to be holding it like this or like this, and unless you're literally holding it by the very edge, part of your hand is probably going to be muffling or covering the microphone, which just completely destroys the quality of the audio. Like, there's moments in the Mario movie where you can't even hear what we're saying because we were covering the mic.
I know that the Daisy that asked Peach that she was being attacked by a Goomba
Was not really Daisy.
Now, granted, that's not a problem if you throw it on a tripod, or even if you're just conscious of where the mic is and make sure you're not covering it, but again, sometimes in the moment you're filming and then you watch the video and you're like, oh crap, the audio is complete trash. But I mean, that aside, the quality is honestly, I think, slightly lower, at least to my eyes, than the Flip. But it's not horrible. I think for its time, it's about on par with the Flip video camera.
I need a pig! I need a pig!
But I
I can't find the pigs, Katie.
I need them. I need a pig.
I gotta say, I don't like the form factor as much. Again, it didn't take a lot to impress me back then. I was like, oh, it's so sleek and cool. And looking back now, I think the original flip model is still my favorite. But, you know, this one's not horrible. It's nice, it's sleek, it's cool, and it can also take pictures. And there was no way to take pictures on the flip. You could take stills of your videos in editing, but there was no way on the camera to take a picture. You can do that now. Cool. As far as the rating goes, again, it's fine. You know, it's a good camera for just starting out. It's about on par with the flip. I just personally prefer the form factor of the flip, and I think the quality's slightly higher. So I'm gonna give this one a 6 out of 10. So where do we go from here? Well, guys, you know, in life, sometimes in order to move forward, you also have to move backwards sometimes, right? Introducing the Aiptek HD Camcorder. I hate this camera, guys. I despise this camera with a burning, fiery passion. Now, to be fair, some of my disdain for this camera comes from personal grudge, so let's take an objective look first, shall we? This model released in 2008 for either $120 or $200, depending on where you bought it. That price is a travesty. And if it gives you any idea about this camera's staying power, you can find this on eBay for anywhere from $10 to $15. I bought this one for about $12, and I feel ripped off. Okay, let's settle down. Why do I hate this camera so much? I think it was just because of the fact that I thought it was an upgrade. I still have this camera. I never lost it or broke it, so you might be asking, why did I move on to another camera? Well, I think it was my grandma who had one of these. She bought it at Target, and she was like, hey, you know, if you need a camera, like I've got one here, you can basically have this one. And I was like, a new camera? Yes, great! I got it in my head that I wanted a camera that like had a screen like this, that you could take it and you could rotate it and all that stuff. And my grandma was like, well, have I got just the thing. And so in 2015, I moved on from the Sony camera to this one. I was 11 years old at the time, and even still, it baffles me how I didn't realize that this was a significant downgrade. For reference, I used this camera to film my Legend of Zelda movie that sort of launched my first ever YouTube channel, Firebolt the Gamer. All of that is still up to this day if you're, well, you can check it out at your own risk. Now, calling this an HD camera is honestly so misleading. I'm sure you could squeeze some halfway decent quality out of it, but you can see from the footage that I got, and later when we do the comparison footage, it just doesn't look good. Even if it's technically HD, it claims to be 720, it doesn't look good. It looks super grainy and just not great. Not to mention the sound quality is absolutely atrocious.
Wow, cool.
Now, even on a tripod, you're not touching it or messing with it at all. The sound quality is still pretty awful. There's a lot of background noise, a lot of hiss. Now, of course, the real problem comes when you're actually operating it. Any sort of movement that you make, any button you press, is going to amplify in this thing. It makes this this wretched sound that renders your footage just unusable. So you can see in that Zelda movie at the end of every shot, because I didn't know how to cut out the end of the shot, that there's this nasty noise of me pressing stop on the camera.
And that there is a recovery heart.
Well, sure, I'd love some.
But guys, again, maybe I'm being unfairly harsh on this camera. Again, 2008, at the time, you know, there weren't many great options. This was probably decent if you knew what you were doing. I certainly didn't. As far as the rating goes, again, I know I'm biased, but I despise this camera, and I hope it burns in hell. I'm giving this a 3 out of 10. And guys, that's about it until present day. Now, I know you're like, you know, the last one was from 2015. That's quite a huge gap. What happened? Well, I started using my phone. It was around 2015 that I got my first iPhone. It was an iPhone 5S, and that was also around the time when iPhone cameras and cell phone cameras in general were starting to get pretty okay. Of course, if you were gonna do anything in a serious capacity, then a phone camera would not do, But if this was what you were coming from, then a phone camera was gonna be just as good, if not better. And so up until my most recent camera, I pretty much used whatever phone I had at that point for all of my video making projects. In fact, you're watching phone footage right now. I'm using my phone to film this. I don't think cell phone cameras will ever replace actual video cameras, but I mean, they're getting so good that you can do a lot with just a cell phone. But of course, this video is more so just focused on the legitimate standalone video cameras that I had, so I won't be talking too much about my phones. But we will include them in the comparison footage, just so you can get an idea of you know, what I was working with over the years. But guys, that brings us to the present day. Here is the Sony Alpha 6400. Now, after doing some research, I narrowed it down to a few options, and this was one of them, and I'm glad I picked it. Now, this camera released in 2019. It retailed for $900 for just the body and $1,000 for the body with a kit lens included. Nowadays, you can find it used for a wide range of prices. I managed to get a hold of this one with a kit lens included for $600. Pretty good deal. Now, this is funny because this is my very first actual real video camera, and a lot of these features that I'm going to gush about are probably are pretty commonplace for video cameras, so it might be funny that I'm like so impressed by them. But again, like, I'm coming from these pieces of crap, so for me it's like, oh, a removable SD card. Yeah, this has just about everything you'd expect from a video camera. You can change the lens, it's got a removable SD card, and of course, the screen can flip around. Now, of course, once you get into this territory, you have so many options for what camera to choose, what lens to buy, and this is not the video where I'm going to be going into any of that. I chose this one because from what I found, it's a great entry-level camera, but you can still get some real power out of it. And from what I saw, it kind of makes the most sense if you're just getting into videography to invest in a decent but not too expensive body, and then really spend most of your time and money on some good lenses. And so that's kind of my approach moving forward. I'm loving this thing so far. I've used it for a couple projects. It's got me into photography as well, which is fun. I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. Really solid camera, and I can't wait to keep using it. Well guys, I think it's about time to look at some comparison footage. I'm gonna film the same shot with all of these different cameras, and I'll show you guys the footage back to back so you can make your own judgment. You don't have to take my word for it. Hasn't this been a fun experience? We've got to explore the good, the bad, and the really bad. And guys, regardless of what I think of these actual cameras, I've made some awesome memories with all of these, and I wouldn't trade the experience for the world. and you best believe I'm gonna keep making movies no matter what gear I've got. So I think that about wraps it up for today. See you guys, have a good day, thanks for watching. Peace out!